what's up, guys? How's it going? Travis and Susie here from the Wolf Hunters. We got a reaction video for you. We got this link. You can find that in the description box, which is below the video. There's a link. Click it and pick it. You can request music, movie scenes, comedy skits, live performances, documentary segments, sports, and more for the Wolf Hunterz Reactions channel. Today's video is brought to you by Brian, bringing us favorite orchestra moments for Big Drums Part 4.
Brian says, "Hi, Susie and Travis. I wanted to share with you an excerpt of Richard Atkinson's fourth and final installment of his favorite orchestral moments for big drums, which happens to be the source of my latest ringtone for when my wife calls me. More on that in a minute. This excerpt highlights Stravinsky's masterpiece, The Rite of Spring, which you may be familiar with if you've ever seen Disney's Fantasia. It's the music from the dinosaur segment. Richard does something in this video that my wife does all of the time. He attempts to sing something that's unsingable. Alexandra continually does this around the house, and it's hilarious. At the 35-minute and 33-second mark, Richard attempts to sing the first page of the naming and honoring of the chosen one part of the piece. I sampled it and made it into my ringtone for Alexandra. I'm hoping that I don't get caught because in case she ever calls me when my phone is within earshot, I'm going to tell her that I recorded her trying to sing some Bartok or Stravinsky, and that it's her voice she's hearing. What do you think? Will she buy it? Of course, it sounds just like her goofing around and singing weird stuff. I'm really hoping that I don't get in trouble, though. Kindest regards, Brian. Please start at 33 and 04.
33:04.
You know what?
End at the end.
You know what, Brian? I don't know how she would respond to that.
Guys, go ahead, hit that like and subscribe button. And let's do it.
When Travis calls, it's the Jaws theme. Darn it. Darn it. Just kidding. He just has a generic ringtone. He doesn't have a special ringtone. I'm sorry.
Moving on, I think it's only fitting to end this video series with one of the greatest pieces for timpani and bass drum, and probably most other instruments too, Stravinsky's The Rite of Spring, composed in 1913, one of the most famous and justifiably revered pieces in the entire orchestral literature. For this video, I gave myself the impossible task of choosing just 4 of my favorite timpani and bass drum moments from this masterpiece, and I intend for this to be a preview of my eventual much more thorough deep dive that I've been teasing in prior videos. Since the music of this ballet is meant to portray a series of ancient pagan rituals and dances, including at the end a human sacrifice, it makes sense for the drums to play such an important role to evoke images of a ritualistic drum circle in a primitive village. The drums are also critical in emphasizing the rhythmic unpredictability for which The Rite of Spring is famous, and they play a starring role in the most wildly ferocious moments of the piece. Let's start with one of these, the terrifying opening of the Glorification of the Chosen One dance that I already mentioned in the first video of this series, a moment so iconic and shocking that Disney chose it only 27 years later to accompany the scary Tyrannosaurus Rex scene in the animated film Fantasia, though of course the actual subject matter of choosing a young maiden for the eventual deadly ritual is perhaps even more frightening. A menacing crescendo, including the tam-tam, builds to this infamous bar with an 11/4 time signature, in which 4 differently tuned timpani and the bass drum team up with the strings to play 11 dissonant polychords. This introduces the wild first page, consisting of these upward shrieks from the flutes and piccolo, answered by these downward snarls heard mostly from the horns, and this bar of umpas, with the ums being played by the bass drum and lower strings, and the pas being played by everyone else. Rhythmic and metric unpredictability are on full display on this first page, following that bar of 11 from the last page with 2 bars of 5/8. Then the oompa bar of 9/8 that feels like it has an extra at the end, since the downbeat of the next 5/8 bar is also an So this whole first page sounds a little something like this.
I can relate to that.
Now listen to how
You know
this all
what?
actually sounds.
You know what? That is like half of writing music in band practice is somebody going, hey, play that part a little bit like this. You know?
Ain't that the truth?
It's true.
That's so
or
funny.
you know?
Yeah.
You're just making it up.
That's great.
Okay, so how
After
would
this
you do
first
it?
page, listen for these confusing
Like right? Like I would like everyone to try to do that.
Did you ever see Fantasia?
Yeah, I've seen Fantasia. And Fantasia 2000.
I have not.
You haven't? Yeah.
7/8
I
bars
watched it,
that
like,
begin
not that
with an
long ago.
unexpected extra oompa, and also try to notice how Stravinsky exploits the very different sounds of the timpani and bass drum, especially when played loudly. The timpani have a much more in-your-face explosive sound, but notice when the bass drum plays these 3 triple forte notes that it just sounds deeper, scarier, and more earth-shattering than if the timpani had played them. Also listen for one of the many drum circle moments I mentioned earlier, when the timpani repeat these groups of 4, even though the time signature is still 5/4. You'll know it's coming because it's immediately preceded by my favorite trumpet outburst that I'll highlight orange. I'll mostly save for the future video my discussion of the final sacrificial dance, the most rhythmically difficult and complex section of the piece, during which the chosen one dances herself to death. But no collection of great timpani moments could possibly exclude this maniacal passage that also includes bass drum and tam-tam. Now let's jump backward to the ritual of abduction that also includes prominent timpani and bass drum parts. Listen for this figure played by timpani tuned a major seventh apart, followed by this similar but faster figure played by the horns. At the end of this section, these frenetic flurries from the strings are interrupted by explosive chords from the whole orchestra, including timpani. But then, in this single bar, the bass drum suddenly appears to replace the expected timpani and whole orchestra with this unaccompanied single note solo, followed by the expected timpani and orchestra chord. Believe it or not, this single bar is what originally inspired this entire video series, since it's such a perfect demonstration of the sound of the bass drum followed immediately by the sound of the timpani. Now listen to this whole section.
Wait, do they have a live performance of this? That would be epic, right?
Oh, yeah.
That would be so cool.
Yeah.
I decided to end this video series with the frenzied Dance of the Earth that concludes part 1 of the Rite of Spring. This is preceded by the Kiss of the Earth, an eerie moment of stasis involving timpani and this suspenseful dissonant string chord, before the prestissimo dance begins in the most dramatic way possible, with this crescendoing bass drum solo, nearly overpowered in the next bar by this tam-tam crescendo. The timpani now create a 4-against-3 polyrhythm with the bass drum that will persist until the final few bars of the dance. Again, we hear rhythmically unpredictable loud chords from the whole orchestra, interspersed with additional deafening tam-tam crescendos. After the subito piano we just heard, the remainder of the dance is one giant crescendo that adds layer upon layer, becoming increasingly feverish and energetic. First, listen for these upward whole-tone scales played by the bass clarinets, fragments of which we've already been hearing, doubled by a 16th note cello version that matches the rhythm of the timpani. The rhythm of the bass drum is matched by the horns playing fragments of a theme that will become much more prominent later in the piece. Smaller fragments of which we also just heard, doubled by the violas. Because all of this continues for the remainder of the dance, I won't highlight any of it after this first page, instead focusing on these much more audible trumpet entries that sound like those double-tonguing exercises brass players are always doing. Always answered by these whirling dervish figures from the violins. The frenzy comes to a head at rehearsal 78, when the timpani and bass drum suddenly switch to a 3-against-2 polyrhythm at the same moment that the tubas enter for the first time in the whole dance, adding some extra heft to these upward whole tone scales, while the loud, unpredictable chords from the opening now return. These scales and chords continue during the final 4 bars of this immense crescendo, but now the timpani and bass drum again alter their rhythm, with the timpani playing 8th notes and the bass drum just hammering out 12 final crescendoing quarter notes that in some performances can be the main thing we hear. I hope you've all enjoyed this mostly chronological survey of my favorite timpani and bass drum moments, and I'll now conclude the series by playing the frantically intense Dance of the Earth in its entirety.
Uh-oh. So intense. Dang.
That was really impressive.
Yeah. I really like I really like seeing the drum patterns. I don't know if I've ever noticed them written out in the music, like spelled out. So that was pretty cool for me to see, and for it to be like highlighted. Like I've never that I had the focal point being the drums.
It's really just amazing seeing and hearing, I guess, how much is going into
Oh my
a
gosh,
soundtrack like
it's
that.
really beautiful.
It really blows
Intricate.
my mind, because when I think of like a band, just like 5 instruments, or whatever,
Yeah. It's really cool.
Anyway, thank you so much for that one. Thank you guys for hanging out. Enjoyed hanging out. Like and subscribe. Check out this link in the description box below to request your own reaction video. Stay tuned. Stay positive.
We love you guys. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
I just wanna bang my